Sure. We will need a new battery for this one. It's not coming on. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 3 this morning. Genesis chapter 3, we're going to begin with verse 14. It says, "So the Lord said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all cattle, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. And to Adam he said, because you have heeded the voice of your wife, and have eaten from the tree of which I have commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. And you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground. For out of it you are taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return." Let's go ahead and go to our Lord. Our Father, as we come in your name of Christ, we ask that you'll be with us as we look upon your word. Lord, we ask that you would guide us, direct us, and Lord, be able to take this and apply it to our lives this morning. Lord, we ask these things in your name. Amen. When we think about these verses, who is cursed in these verses? And there's two species, if you will, that are pointed out as cursed in these verses. The first is what we refer to as the serpent. God addresses him directly, doesn't he? And God tells him that he is cursed above everything else. And that tells him what's going to happen to him, that on his belly he's going to go, and he's going to have dust for breakfast, lunch, and supper. You know, that he's going to be cursed above every other beast of the field. And it says all the days of your life that you're going to have this. When I think about the serpent, you know, a lot of times we think about a snake. But it's more than a snake. And the curse is more than just that. In Revelation chapter 12, he refers to him there. So that great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil, and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He is cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. When I think about that serpent in the Garden of Eden, I don't think about this snake or rattlesnake or whatever it might be. I think about what he says about in Revelation, the great dragon. I think about him as a majestic creature. A creature, as he says, was more cunning than any other creature of the field. That he was a smart animal. And then Satan entered into him. And I don't believe that Satan just came along and said and entered in. I believe he was invited. And I believe that was part of the curse that is laid out before us. And Satan, as he's in that serpent, as he's in that great dragon, as he's called here in Revelation, God then turns to him, not to just the serpent that is there, but he turns to him and he tells Satan basically, guess what? You are going to be defeated.
Amen.
That you are not going to be able to stand. And we're going to get more into that verse in a little while. Just trying to lay a little background here for a moment. In that verse he says, between your seed and her seed, bruise your head, and he shall bruise your heel. That is not directed to the serpent or the dragon or whatever it might be at that point. That's directed directly to Satan.
Amen.
And that's a promise that's going to happen. Well, he goes on, he talks to the woman. And Sean, if you go back there to Genesis, he talks to the woman and he says, okay, there's some things that's going to happen because you did some things. Yeah, it's interesting to me as God talks to him earlier in this chapter. he says, what have you done? And Adam says, God, it's your fault. You gave me the woman, and she did this. And the woman says, no, it's not my fault. It's the serpent's fault, who you created. And, they all want to try to pass the blame. But God doesn't fall for any of that, does he? To the woman he said, I'll greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception and pain. You'll bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, he shall rule over you. As you look at that verse, what is the result of that verse? Or why is that verse even there? It's because of sin, isn't it? We are not who we were created to be. When we think about who we are, who mankind is, we are not who we were created to be. You realize that funeral services aren't supposed to be part of our life? That's not part of who we are. But even in this, the pain in childbirth, that's not supposed to be there. It's not childbirth isn't supposed to be there. It's the pain's not supposed to be there. As you look at some of those other things in this verse, you notice your desire shall be for your husband, and the things that go along with that. And sorry about this to women's lib and those who talk about that aspect of things. There's a family order that's been placed into existence. Why? Because of sin. It's not the way it was originally designed to be. Shar, go over to, go to Adam. Thank you. To Adam. Now, Adam had a job to do. And before sin happened, Adam still had a job to do. What was he supposed to be doing? Tending to the garden. Taking care of it. The natural order of nature is chaos, by the way. If you don't mow your lawn, you don't weed your garden and things of that nature, you don't trim your trees or your grapes or whatever, it just goes into chaos. Well, Adam had a job before the fall. But to Adam he says, because you've heeded the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree which I have commanded you, saying you shall not eat of it, this is a direct result of it, isn't it? You look at what he says here. You've heeded to the voice of your wife. You have eaten of the tree that I commanded you should not eat of it. Things are about to change. We often talk about how the Lord created the earth in 6 days and on the seventh rested, but here's another creation that comes into play. There was not thorns and there was not thistles, there was not all the weeds and all the other things that came along with the creation. Sure, there wasn't ticks and Lyme disease. There wasn't mosquitoes and all these other things that we have to deal with, was there? Because life was perfect in that aspect of things. When you even stop to think about it, there wasn't snow and there wasn't extreme heat because man didn't have all the things that we have today. We have a furnace running this morning. They didn't have that in the garden. They didn't need it. We have an air conditioner. They wouldn't have needed that either. It would have been paradise, yes. But he comes and he says this, cursed is the ground for your sake. Sure, I forgot to give you this verse. That's all right. In Isaiah, he talks about how the one who is harvesting overtakes the one who is planting because it just produces that quickly. And when he is talking about that happening is when Christ is here. When he sets up the time on this earth. The ground that we have, the produce that we have, you realize it's not doing what it's supposed to do. I don't care how good your garden is. I don't care how wonderful your fruit trees are. I don't care how much you can get out of one plant of summer squash. Can you imagine if it was producing the way it was supposed to produce? It's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's short of it. We have seasons. JJ has a lemon tree in the house. It's got little lemons on it right now. And it's also blooming. Well, see, the picture is that they would have fruit and blooms at the same time. But that's not happening today, is it? Well, he goes on, and he talks, the curse is the ground for your sake, and toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. In other words, you're going to have to struggle to get that to produce something. It's not going to just do it automatically. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat of the herb of the field. And it's going to bring forth all these nice thorns and thistles. I love blackberries. I really do. And this years back, Cheryl and I had just been married, and we had poison ivy in New York. And I would get that occasionally. But you have something worse than that out here. Poison oak, yes.
Yeah.
And we went out blackberry picking, and I was picking blackberries, and I did not see the poison oak in the blackberries because we don't have it out there. I wasn't looking for it. And I got scratched all up my arm because of the thorns and the thistles that are there. And then it swelled up like a balloon. That's part of the curse. You know, I still ate those blackberries. But that's part of the curse. That wasn't there before this happened. Death. From you will turn to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. All these things happen because of sin. The creation that we have, the very things that we look at, the very beings that we are all changed because of sin. And amidst all this curse that God puts upon us, and puts upon the dragon, and puts upon the ground, he gives us a promise. And Shar, go back to Genesis 3, where that promise is. The one I told you to put out there all by itself. And I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Here is a promise of our Savior. And he's not talking to just the serpent at that point. And he's not talking to just Adam and Eve at that point. He's telling us all at this point that there is something great coming. Where'd Christ come from? Well, he was there in heaven. But what happens? He's born of a virgin, placed in a manger. But here he is, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the seed of woman, the Son of God. And as I think about this verse and the placement of this verse, even in the midst of sin, even in the midst of judgment, God is saying, I'm going to take care of that.
Amen.
Even in the midst of the serpent is being cursed, and even in the midst of Eve being punished and Adam being cursed and the ground being cursed, God says, I am going to take care of it.
Amen.
To bruise the serpent's head is to kill it, is to put it away. And if you go back into, you don't need to go back there, but if you go back to Revelation 12, where it talked about that great dragon being cast out, it says there's a war in heaven. And he is cast out with his angels and put into that bottomless pit and into eternity without God. He's taken care of. But it cost God. Sin did not just cost Adam and Eve. If you read further in Genesis 3, you will find that God killed 2 animals. and clothe them. It cost those animals that day. But it didn't just cost them, it cost God. Salvation is not an easy thing. You know, it is for us. You know why it's so easy for us? Because God did all the work. God did everything that was necessary. And God took care of it for us. But it wasn't easy. But I like another aspect of this. This is a promise. This is the Christmas gift, if you will. I remember as a child, we had 4 special lights on the Christmas tree. And I have mine somewhere, I just can't remember where it's at. And underneath each one of these special lights was the gifts that our mom and dad was getting for us. And I remember laying there on the floor, staring at that light and wondering when the gifts were going to get there. There was that expectation because I knew that there was going to be something special. Well, see, Romans chapter 8 talks about that very same expectation that we have. Now, Romans chapter 8 is talking about what is going to happen and what is going to take place. And as you think about Romans chapter 8 here, he's talking about an expectation. Why is this gift that he sees in Genesis so important? Because we're not who we're supposed to be. We're not what we're supposed to be. This earth was supposed to be our home. But we messed it up. Sin messed it up. You know, there's a song that says, I'm not home yet, and it talks about I'm going to be with God in heaven because this is not where I belong. However, this really was where we belonged. We messed it up. Sin messed it up. And there's that gift that is coming that is going to change everything. And I like what he says here, the expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. Think about what he's saying here. All of creation, and you can look at verse 21, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption. The creation is going to be restored. You know, think about that for a while. All of this is going to be taken care of. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. As I think about what he's talking about here, he's talking about the very idea that we're going to be at home with God. How many of you want to be there? You know, and I think about that. My grandfather used to put it this way. He says, you know, I really want to go to heaven. I'm really anxious to go there, but God still has things for me to do here, so I'm not going to go out and jump in front of a Mack truck to do it. Well, we desire to be with God. Amen. We desire that. Why? Well, one is we were created to have fellowship with Him. Think about it for a moment. Adam and Eve, what did they do? They talked to God. They had fellowship with God. They walked with God. And I have no idea how long they were in the garden. I don't really care how long they were there. All I know is they walked and talked and saw God face to face. And then there was sin, and they were kicked out of the garden. And what did he say to Moses when Moses said, I want to see you face to face? No one can look at my face and live, but we will one day see our Lord and Savior face to face.
Praise God.
And we won't have to worry about dying. We'll be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is. Can you imagine that? Adam and Eve saw Him as He was. And we're going to see Him the same way.
Praise God.
All of creation groans. All of creation is waiting for that gift to be revealed. Well, you see, the problem with that is, as we look at it, we're not there yet, but the gift has been revealed. My parents used to say this: if you figure out, or if you open up your present before Christmas, we'll take it back. Mom's not here, and I might ask JJ to put his hand over the camera or whatever, but you know there's a way to take that tape off.
Yes.
And you can see what that gift is. And if you're real careful, you can put it back together.
Cheater. Wow.
We have the same thing. We have opened up that gift, and we see what it is. Now, it may be sealed back up because we are not in the presence of God yet. But you know something? I know the end of the book. I know who wins. And I know where John says, I looked and I beheld a multitude without number, from every race, from every tongue, from every kindred, from every tribe. He saw us all.
Amen.
I know what the gift is under the tree. And I know God's not going to take it back. You see, in John, he says something very interesting about this gift. He says something very interesting about the promise that he made to Eve and to Adam about what was going to happen. He revealed to us that the gift is taken care of when he said this: it is finished. Satan was defeated that day on the cross. Our gift of life is made evident that day on the gift of the cross. When I think about what he says here, it is finished, that means very simply this: that what he promised to Adam and Eve that day, what he said to that serpent, the snake, or the Satan that day, it's done. It's taken care of. It is finished. Someone has been defeated. You know who that someone is that's been defeated? Satan himself. Now, I don't know if he knew that on that day or not, but he knows it now. And I do know this, that he says he believes in God. He knows there's a God, and he trembles at that very fact because he knows what the outcome's going to be. And you know, when he says it is finished, it means something to us too. And it's not just that the work on the cross was done. It's not just that it's taken care of, or sin's taken care of. When John looked in the book of Revelation, and this hurts my head to try to wrap my mind around it, he saw even me there in heaven. I'm here, but he saw me there. And when God talks about it in the book of Romans chapter 8, and not the one that I have for you, Shar, but in Romans chapter 8, have you ever looked at that, where he talks about whom he sanctified, whom he justified, then he also glorified. Glorified. That's important because it's in the past tense. It's not those he will glorify. It's already done it. It's already taken care of. It's not that he looks at it and he sees the work as complete. That's not what he means by that. He means exactly what John said. I saw them there. I saw them in the presence of God. I saw them before Jesus Christ. I saw them already in heaven. It's not that it's going to happen, or things of that nature, in the mind of God, and John, as he's looking, he says, it's already done. It's already taken care of. It's finished. Everything's finished. Shall I go back to Romans chapter 8, if you will? And I want you to notice that, yes, the whole creation is waiting for that time. But look at it. There's an expectation of the creation eagerly awaits for the revealing of who? Us.
Awesome.
Us. It awaits for the appearing of us. And the very fact that we are here worshiping God and having that relationship with God changes the very fact of the creation.
Amen.
Yes, it's still waiting for the curse to be lifted. Yes, it's still waiting for all that to happen. But it is going to happen. The earnestly expectation of it, staring at that light on the Christmas tree, knowing that it's going to happen, revealing what the present is, and saying, I just can't wait till when we can open this up and we can see this and it all will take place. You see, when I think about the birth of Christ on that day in Bethlehem, it's not the beginning, it's the completion of the promise.
Amen.
It's the completion of what God promised Adam and Eve and all of creation. You think about it for a moment. God made that promise to everyone present and to us. And that promise is fulfilled with the birth of Jesus Christ. Culminating in the crucifixion and resurrection. I hear people complain about all the shopping they have to do for Christmas. I hear people complain about, their Christmas bonus wasn't what they thought it should be, or things of that nature. I hear people complaining about, I'm going to have to cook for all of these people who are coming for Christmas, or whatever it might be. I hear people complaining over and over again about Christmas. I've even heard pastors say this: I get so tired of preaching on Christmas because I have to come up with a new message every Christmas. And my response to them has been, I can't preach enough about Christmas because there's so much that's there. Instead of complaining about it, are you expecting that gift? Are you looking, you know what the gift is. But are you waiting for it to be opened up? Shall I go back to Genesis 3:15, if you will? Here's the promise of the gift. It's under the tree. Don't peek. Yeah, well, you know how well that went. Don't peek. We know what the gift is. We know it's coming. We've even seen it. And I'll tell you something, there's no way we can give back to Him what He gave to us. I think about it as a child. Mom and Dad would buy these gifts. And I've still got some of them. I doubt if they have anything that I gave them as a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old child, because I'm not sure it would have lasted or stayed together that long. I remember going up to Rice's Hardware, and I had $1. I was going to buy, $1 went a little further than it does now. But there was a state sales tax in New York. If you spent a certain amount, there was a tax that came in. But if you broke that $1 up into 2 50-cent purchases, you didn't have to pay sales tax. So I was smart enough to at least do that. But can you imagine what a 50-cent gift to to my parents would have been compared to what they were buying us. That would be like us trying to give God back equal to what he gave us. We can't do it. The gift of eternal life is beyond price. And the day of sin, the day of judgment, the day of curse is also the day of promise. And it's because of sin that we have that promise. It's because of what we needed. He gave us his Son. I look forward to Christmas every year. Not for the gifts, not for all the other things, but because it's a celebration of what God has given to us. Amen. And can you imagine? I have trouble trying to put this together. But can you imagine what this world will be like without sin, without curse, without judgment, without anything like that, and totally restored? And then that's going to be taken care of, and there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and we'll be in the presence of God. What do you think of your gift?
I like it.
What do you think of your gift? This is what God has given to you. It's yours. My brothers always said this: it's not a question of sin. It's the question of Son. Yeah. What will you do with the Son of God? What will you do with the gift that God has gifted you with? Let's go ahead and go to our Lord. Father, it's come in your name of Christ, so we thank you for this gift that you have given to us. And Lord, it's not just a frivolous gift, it's the greatest gift of all. It's the gift we needed the most. And Lord, we thank you that you have given it to us. And Lord, as we go from here, Lord, help us to always remember it is finished. You did it all. For we ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. As Dayton comes, Jim and Claire come, God has given to us a gift. The greatest gift of all. And as I think about that gift, and I look around here, I would say most of you could probably say that, yeah, I've got that gift. But have you stopped to thank God for it? Because on that very day that sin entered into this world, so did the promise of the gift. It wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't something that was, oh, let's see what we're going to do now. It was on the very day that we needed it the most. He said, here it is. Will you thank him for it? Will you praise him for it? And I know you're looking forward to seeing him face to face. But as we stand and as we sing, just take a moment to say to God, thank you. Thank you for that gift.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and we're all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but our toil he doth richly repay. if we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey.
You may be seated. December 17th, is that the right day, Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay. 6 o'clock here at the church. We're inviting you all to come and be part of our Christmas dinner. You told me it was Mexican. Has that changed?
No, we're having a Mexican fiesta.
Okay. So, want to invite you all to come and be part of that. And bring desserts if you want. Otherwise, bring yourself.
Would hot sauce be a dessert?
If you want to bring some hot sauce, go ahead and bring some.
Yes, Mike.
So that'll be December 17th, 6 o'clock here at the church, and you're all invited to come and be part of that. Other than that, you have something over here.
Yeah, I want it. My wrist has gotten bad. I don't knit anymore, and most of you know that I have and do or did. But I have a big box over here, and it's got many hats and scarves, and they're going to set up. Somebody promised me they'd set up a round table, and I've got a mirror over there so that you can try them on. But they are free. You take if you've got a person that's in an old person's home, you know, you have a neighbor, you know, these are all new, these are all not been used, so I want everybody to, when they're out, take what you'd like, use them. I don't want any money from them. If you want to give anything, then put it in a church envelope and give it to the church. Okay, that's really, it's going to be here until after Christmas, before the New Year's out.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Alan
How's
Miles,
this time? It's time to set
Yeah,
down.
that's good. Alan Miles says pink combs, if anybody signs the pink combs, pink combs back.
Yeah, he's right. There's a big comb floating around somewhere.
Coming up on December 10th from 6 to 8 p.m., the Drain Church of Christ has a live drive-through nativity scene. Now, I read that the first time I thought, okay, they set up the nativity scene, we drive right straight through it. I think a drive-by nativity scene might be. What's the matter? Did you have the same thought I did? Okay. Anyway, December 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. It'll be at the church's parking lot up there on 2nd Street. Also, and I don't have one up here with me. Char, if you have one over there. December 3rd through the 10th is the prayer week for our foreign missionaries. And you should have had one of these on your chair, and it just as a guide for who to pray for and when to pray for them and so forth. Also, there's an envelope there if you want to support foreign missions. That goes, actually they call it international missions now. But if you want to support that, that goes directly to the missionaries. It doesn't stay at the mission board, it doesn't stay in the Southern Baptist Convention. It goes directly to the missionaries. And we'll be having those offerings and those envelopes available through the month of December. Other than that, I don't think I have any other announcements, David. You have a closing hymn for us?
Yes, we do.
Let's all stand.
We're going to do the chorus to What Child Is This?